this will be a spicy podcast because I will say I'm disagreeing.
It's something about the big occasion that really brings alive Michy Batshuayi. And for the viewers, he scored 21 goals for Belgium in 32 games.
They conceded 4 goals in 10 games, scoring 37.
That's a classic Italy goal, we know, but those scoring numbers seem higher than we have been accustomed to with Italy.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Eurowatch, the show covering all you need to know about next year's Euros. I am with the ever-reliable Ritwik. Ritwik, how are you today, my friend?
Well, it's a nice sunny day out here in San Francisco, but winter is coming. And it seems like for global football, that is not spelling the right conditions.
Winter's already arrived there. It has been pissing it down with rain all day, so I am extremely jealous of you right now. But anyway, this episode will be delving into a promising Italian side and perhaps in my opinion, more topical Belgian team that will both be trying to challenge for the next year's final. This was filmed, just to let you guys know, this was filmed before the England game in November. We don't know what will happen in Belgium versus England tonight. It's actually taking place an hour before this recording. But Ritwik, what did you get up to today?
Well, I was having a look at the international fixtures that took place, I believe, yesterday, which is Saturday, I believe the 14th of November. So that was a very interesting game between France and Portugal, and it was a battle of two of the most favored teams, and I would say France eked it out, but deserving winners at the end. And I believe this takes France to the finals of the Nations League.
I believe so. I mean, I had I did a similar thing yesterday. Actually, I was watching an international fixture, but I picked the less exciting one. I picked Sweden v Croatia, and I'll tell you right now, Ritwik, I'm not looking forward to the episode where we dissect both of those teams because I almost fell asleep watching them.
Yeah, it's such a double-edged sword with these international friendlies, because on one hand, we have to remind everybody we're still living in a pandemic, and the number of people contracting this virus, number of important players actually have been rising quite exponentially. Mohamed Salah has been tested positive for the virus, and Alex Telles, for some reason, has tested positive again, despite having just recovered from it. So So as we're talking to you about these fixtures, there seems to be a general air of discontent about them. But someone's got to talk about them, and for you guys, that someone is Alex and myself. And on that line, we're gonna look at two contrasting teams in these Euros. We're talking about Belgium and we're talking about Italy. Italy obviously have had international success. Belgium have not, but the roles this time have seemed reversed. Belgium seemed like the team in ascendancy, whereas Italy are finding a new footing after really qualified for the last tournament.
I can go into that if they would like. If you'd like, Ritwik, I've done quite extensive research. You'll be able to find an article on this rise for the Italian team this week. Italy, as some listeners may have known, as some readers in the future are going to know about this article, they'll probably remember quite a depressing picture of Gianluigi Buffon sobbing his heart out as Italy failed to qualify for the last World Cup. What happened was Italy had to beat Sweden in a playoff. They had lost the first game 1-0 in Sweden, and then they drew the second one 0-0 at home. And there's quite an interesting anecdote I have found actually about what that second game in particular, which is going to sum up what has happened pretty well with Italy. So in that game, it was quite late on. The manager at the time, who was Luigi Di Biagio, right? He wanted to make a substitution late on, and he looked to Daniele De Rossi, a centre defensive midfielder. De Rossi at that point actually lost it and shouted at one of the assistants, "Why are you bringing me on? Bring on him," pointing at Lorenzo Insigne. But nevertheless, Insigne didn't manage to come on, despite being one of the most high-profile attacking forwards in Italy at that time. And of course, Italy failed to score in that game. that was pretty endemic of what's been happening with the country. Well, what happened since Antonio Conte had left. It's quite funny. I've recently been reading Andrea Pirlo's autobiography, and he described Antonio Conte as one of the best coaches to ever live. He's something else, something charismatic, a genius. And after Conte left after the 2016 Euros, Italy stuck with their three at the back system, and it was just not really clicking. As the World Cup summarised, they were not attacking well. They were losing to teams like Macedonia, I believe it was. They might have drawn against them, to be fair. It was a draw against Macedonia and some other minnows, as we would describe them, and then obviously failing to beat Sweden. So after this complete embarrassment, Italy turned to former Manchester City manager Roberto Mancini. And in Mancini's first game, Ritwik, he did something that was pretty much exactly what the fans would be crying out for. He switched from a back three, the first time Italy would have done so since 2014. And he started Insigne and benched De Rossi. It marked a wonderful change that has seen them arise through these fixtures. They've actually finished unbeaten in their Euro qualifying groups. They finished 30 points. I believe they conceded, if I have it somewhere here, they conceded 4 goals in 10 games, scoring 37.
That's a classic Italy of all we know, but those scoring numbers seem higher than we have been accustomed to with Italy.
Yeah, Ritwik, I was going to say, you said in your little intro, you said you seemed a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Less positive about the Italian team. What's your thoughts on them?
Younger team is what Mancini is sort of looking towards, and the balance of the team, and this is something that's not lost on Mancini, is that when you're playing an international tournament, you need your experienced guns to really shepherd some of these more younger players, and you need some form of older guard. You still have people like Leonardo Bonucci. You still have people like Giorgio Chiellini. You probably still have experienced hands in the midfield, but the attacking force and the midfield force is fairly new, but fairly promising in terms of the kind of talent that is at Italy's disposal. Suffered injuries to people like Nicolo Zaniolo, and those will definitely temper the sort of excitement. But you've got a good sense of where they might be heading, but it might just be a little too soon. So Italy, I feel, might come alive maybe in the next season of play, but for right now, I'm not looking to Italy with much promise. This tournament hopefully will have people like Tonali, Emerson, maybe even Gagliardini. These are the type of people you really want to start punching above their weight.
This will be a spicy podcast because I will say I'm disagreeing, but we both have you have quite a well-founded base there in terms of some of the youngsters aren't quite ready yet, but. The topics, the teams we've picked for this podcast, Italy and Belgium, they are quite interesting because after delving through the tournament tree, which believe me was not much fun, Italy and Belgium will likely face each other in the quarterfinal of the Euros. They'll be, as long as they both win their groups, which is pretty projected, they'll come across the third best placed teams in some of the weaker groups. So I think it'll be the likes of Croatia possibly. They're likely to face off against each other in the quarters. And Ritwik, where you're sounding, do you think Belgium will win? Give me your thoughts on that.
I want Belgium to really win, but I believe Belgium's problems will come down to the same problems they had in the World Cup. It's those one or two crucial positions in which they were lacking depth. And this, to cast a viewers back, is when Belgium, I believe, played France in the semi-finals of the World Cup, while Croatia were busily dispatching off England's hopes. You had Thomas Meunier, who was suspended for the game after picking up another yellow in that quarterfinal game, and you had Nasser Chadli playing at right wing back. And mind you, this is a position where Roberto Martinez is still favoring him to play, but you would have seen if you had watched the game, Antoine Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe sort of doubling up on Chadli, sort of bullying him and getting the ball across. And this is where it's a nice contrast. Whereas Mancini and Italy have sort of gone back to back four, Roberto Martinez has stayed with a back three. And he's got the likes of Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen to really rely on. These are, their strongest, most experienced players. These are players who've played, I believe, the last 3 tournaments. They've been the starting back central defensive pair.
And Alderweireld has the most minutes in the squad, I believe, right now. Out of the last 2 years, he's played the most minutes for Belgium in international fixtures.
And that's not a surprise. He's, he's disciplined. He's a short. He's the kind of presence you want in front of Thibaut Courtois. But it's that third centre back spot which Martinez has been sort of experimenting with. You have, Lyon's Jason Denayer, who had a good campaign in the Champions League last season, especially against Real Madrid. And then you have Hertha Berlin's Ritwik Boyata. Now, either one of these or both of these are being paired with either Vertonghen or Alderweireld. And it's working to an extent. The times they've played together, Belgium have been strong, but it's knowing that when these wing backs push up, and the wing back strength is quite strong with Castagna of Leicester, formerly of Atalanta, who's just been going from strength to strength. On the right, you have Thomas Meunier, who's now become sort of the backup to him, who's playing at Dortmund. And on the left, you have a very interesting option because Torgan Hazard, the younger brother of Real Madrid's Eden Hazard, has been marshalling that left wing back spot quite well. Even though he plays a left wing for his team Borussia Dortmund, he's sort of really taken the defensive responsibility to heart in that position. But if he gets injured, I believe Belgium might have 1 or 2 problems because they don't have a like for like left wing back per se, or someone like Roberto Martinez has really relied on. He's played Castagna on the left, but it's not something that's really been in a short position. And what that results in, if you've seen a lot of back threes plays, if they go up to support the front, then you have either one of the defensive midfielders tracking back, splitting the defense, and it's where wingers can cause the most havoc.
Yeah, see, with Belgium, I mean, they strike me similar to England in terms of the way you're speaking. With this established 3 at the back system, Torgan Hazard staying back, it's going to go one of 2 ways. Same for England. It's either going to work and they get to keep clean sheets, or it's going to be an embarrassment, because if you don't keep clean sheets, if you don't win these games, I think it's not going to look positive. You mentioned this defense and some of the you've got some players that are trying to be experimented. So you've got Ritwik Boyata of Hertha Berlin. I think you've got Kayembe from the Belgian league and Thomas Fouquet of Rennes. And these players aren't. It seems Belgium, they remind me a bit of Roma as well. They've got the old aging golden generation of Toby Alderweireld, Jan Vertonghen, even Thomas Vermaelen still in there. And then you've got
and Hazard.
Yeah, and you've got the younger players who I think a lot of them aren't quite there yet. Like Jeremy Doku, I think he's going to be a fantastic player in 2022, but he is nowhere near ready yet. At Rennes, he's not playing the most minutes. The same with Jari Verscheren at Anderlecht. He's not quite got those minutes, but he could be very positive in the future. And I think with Belgium, you've got to balance this aging generation. Are they still going to be up to it? Like the likes of Toby Alderweireld and or the sort of younger players like not just younger players, because I'm not going to grip Ritwik Boyata into there or Jason Denayer. They are more established, but obviously they're some way off the super talents. I struggle to look.
He's also looking at players who haven't had much national team experience, who he's trying to call up, like Hans Vanaken of Club Brugge.
Yeah,
or maybe even as you mentioned, Brandon Michel of Brugge as well. These are 27 to 28-year-olds who don't have a wealth of international experience. I'm sorry.
They had I think there's Vormer as well from Club Brugge.
Yes,
yeah. I do respect that, given minutes to players that might not especially get in. But continue what you were saying.
Yeah, but so where sort of comes to that point is where I feel like Roberto Martinez now has this advantage is in that central midfield position. Now, before Roberto Martinez, and maybe just towards the start of his tenure, you had Marouane Fellaini and Rajan Nainggolan and Axel Witsel. These players sort of playing, that midfield triangle. And obviously, Nainggolan had a falling out with Martinez, but Marouane Fellaini was proving to be one of Belgium's most reliable players. And honestly, if he was still playing in Europe, he would be picked first. He's doing okay in China, but that's a conversation for another day. But the point I'm coming to is you have Leander Dendoncker of Wolves and Yuri Tielemans of Leicester, who really come up leaps and bounds to take those central midfield positions, which in essence allows Kevin De Bruyne to play, a little bit more advanced. And I believe that's where, at least for Belgium, De Bruyne will be the most crucial, because if he's stuck in midfield, especially in a more defensive setup in a 3-4-2-1, you're sort of sacrificing a more creative head up front, because as the viewers might know, Eden Hazard has struggled with fitness quite a bit over these last year and a half. And yes, he is fit now and he's looking to rediscover form, but Kevin De Bruyne has sort of filled in that vacuum, and you have players like him, Carrasco, and a surprise inclusion of Brighton and Hove Albion's Leandro Trossard, one of those more, intermediate aged players.
Yeah.
I say intermediate aged, Trossard is younger than I am, but not to give too much away, they have these intermediate players who can really sort of fill in those gaps. And that sort of brings me to, the more we've talked about the deficiencies and the areas where they could falter. Where are Italy's strengths right now lying? Is it more than just, the novelty of having newer players and people not knowing what to expect?
I'm glad you've asked that. I've dissected a lot of Italy's highlights, so they're very clear in terms of this. This is, I think, why I lean a bit more to them rather than Belgium. They're more exciting because their attack is their strength, Ritwik. Their attack is fantastic. Ciro Immobile has been really good with this side, but he's also managing to alternate with Andrea Bellotti. Him and Immobile are some of the top scorers for this Italian side over the last year and a half. And then even with them two, you've got Moise Kean coming through. And also you've got Lorenzo Insigne on the left. You've got Zaniolo coming through on the right, who would have actually missed this tournament if it had taken place this year. He was one of those players that would have completely missed it. So he'll be coming through. But it's not just about the youth in top. And I could list these players all day. Like Bernardeschi and players like that, they play fantastic together. In fact, if you really want to do yourself a favour, Italy recently played the Netherlands. They've played them twice in this UEFA Nations League, and in the first game, they scored one of the best goals you'll ever see. It was one touch play over on the wing from a throw-in. It was lots of little flicks in the air. It reminds you of what Arsenal fans would probably try to imagine as their golden era of at least the 2010s, like that amazing Wilshere goal.
Walking it in, Wenger ball.
Yes, exactly. And it was finished off by an amazing Stefano Sensi goal. Now, their weaknesses is the defence. Even against a struggling Dutch side, which we'll cover in no time, with Frank de Boer struggling at the top of their team, they gave up quite a lot of big chances. They gave up quite big chances against the Netherlands. They've even managed to give away some chances against some of their smaller sides that they've played. Now, that is where it will win or lose them. That's why they're so contrasting with Belgium. Whereas Belgium, they're very unlikely to give away goals. It's just whether they'll score them as much is their issue. Italy, I will bet my life they'll be some of the top scorers in the Euros, but if they give these sort of big chances away like they are at the moment, they can be costly. And I will say before we
big calls.
Yeah, I will say before we go further into them, Italy and Belgium, if you're wondering if they'll even get out of the group if they'll finish top, they definitely will, I believe. Italy in their group will be facing I've lost it right now. They'll be facing, Italy will be facing Turkey, Switzerland, and Wales in their group. They're clear favourites there. Now, Belgium, they'll be facing Denmark, Finland, and Russia. They're clearly the favourites in both of their groups. They're going to get through. They're probably going to win the group. But as we're disagreeing for the methods of debate, Italy versus Belgium, it is tough. Do you really think they're going to be able to go through them? Because we'll have to agree on a prediction by the end of it, Ritwik. Convince me. You think Belgium have got what it takes?
I think Belgium have gotten what it takes if on the day they've got the right personnel, because the 3-4-2, the 3-4-3 or the 3-4-2-1 is not a formation that many of the players play, but for some reason it clicks for the Belgian national team. And this sort of brings me to Belgians ace in the hole, a player who I feel has been very criminally underrated, primarily being judged on one bad season in Manchester United, is Romelu Lukaku. And I'll give the viewers this little tasty tidbit. In the last 4 years, Romelu Lukaku has a 95% goals to game ratio.
That's ridiculous.
He has been on an absolute tear, and this is very interesting because he's a perfect man for Belgium right now, because at Inter Milan under Antonio Conte, he's playing under the previous Italian manager. He's playing in a back three system, and he's playing in a back three system for Belgium as well. Under another Italian manager, Roberto Martinez. So the parallels are quite good. And Romelu Lukaku sort of can either, trace back a little bit from the center forward, play that, that 9.5 role. He can play from the right wing. Despite being a left footer, has a very mean right-footed cross. And he shows the rest of the attack how he wants the ball played to him by playing the ball to other players themselves. And I think if I can cast the viewers' minds back to I think it was the match against England, where they did they did lose 2-1.
Yeah, it was undeserved.
Yeah, it was an undeserved. And Lukaku had a very good game, right? Behind Carrasco and De Bruyne. And there's a huge amount of trust that's placed on them, especially with the mercurial Eden Hazard being out of the team. Romelu Lukaku has taken the world by the horns and is leading this Red Devils charge.
This is where I have to. I completely agree. Lukaku is a superb forward, and I think Courtois is the best goalkeeper in the Euros. And this is where I have to say is my worries, because if Lukaku goes out, you've got Michy Batshuayi. If Courtois goes out, you've got Simon Mignolet at I believe Club Brugge.
Yes, Club Brugge.
If Kevin De Bruyne, although you've got Tielemans in there, who has got one of the most minutes, Kevin De Bruyne has only got 480 minutes over the last year and a half for Belgium. If he misses out, that's another big loss. And I just think at Italy, you've got players like Bernardeschi who can step up, Zaniolo who can step up, Moise Kean who can step up. You've got a lot of depth there, and like you said on the day, if you have like you started with it, if Belgium have these players there, then I think they've got the pragmatism to get through it. I've watched them a bit recently. They like to commit a nice dirty tactical foul to slow the game up. Whereas Italy,
as always,
like I said, they have big deficiencies at the back. They've clearly given up chances still. But if you've got those injuries, if you've got Courtois out, and then if you've got De Bruyne out, or if you've said, you've got Hazard out or Lukaku, I think you get any one of these out, then it makes the game impossible to call.
It makes it impossible to call, and this is where Roberto Martinez might have to tactically switch to a more conservative back four system. But it's interesting you brought up Michy Batshuayi. It's something about the big occasion that really brings alive Michy Batshuayi. And for the viewers, he scored 21 goals for Belgium in 32 games. That's a good record. That's a record to be proud of, even if he retired the next day, because he's got 5 goals in 3 games in 2020, 4 in 6 in 2019, and 7 in 10 in 2018. And it's a very good return, and a lot of these goals have come in qualification games, in the World Cup, in the Nations Leagues. I believe he's only scored 4 or 5 of his goals in friendly games. The rest have all been at tournaments. This is the kind of player who is similar in Lukaku in the sense that he's not the out and out apex center forward like the Brazilian Ronaldo used to be. He's the newer forward who can, fill in those half spaces, lash out a good shot, force the keeper to fumble, and then get the goal in. And I believe that even if Lukaku is out, people like Carrasco, people like Mertens, people like Batshuayi. These are the kind of players, and you saw in the last World Cup, these are the people who come alive when the occasion comes alive. But that will yet to be seen from the players like Tielemans, players like Dendoncker. These are players who are going to get their first real, big boy taste of the tournament, and that's going to be where the make or break lies. The fluidity will have to be there in the attack, the shortness will have to be there in the defense. Belgium is a team that if everything clicks for a majority period of this time, I can see them winning the whole tournament. But it all comes down to missing those 1-2 players.
With that then, I say I'll offer you a proposal then. I say right now, because obviously even though this debate has been very good, we can't let it go on forever. I'll give you the offer that if Courtois does not get injured, we can put down in our predictions, which we will post soon, that Belgium will. This is what I can. This is, I think, the most logical one we can go through, and like I said, it's impossible to give it outright. Belgium go through on penalties because Courtois will be the superior keeper, and Donnarumma's not quite at that level yet. Would you give that as a fair thing, or maybe Belgium edge it 1-0 after extra time?
I'd actually go with the former, because anything can happen at these international tournaments, and especially with a tournament that's been delayed a whole year, there is a lot more itchiness for a lot of players to prove their spot in the team. I don't really think Roberto Martinez's job is on the line in any form. I believe he's someone who's really taken this Belgium team more towards their more logical conclusions, and it'll be incumbent upon them to really prove that, yes, we are part of that central cog that needs to go on with this manager for the future. But anything can happen on a given day, and Italy can always punch above their weight, as they have been, throughout this entire qualification Nations League process.
Yeah, for any Italian fans, just before we wrap up, I'll leave you and Ritwik with a quote that's come out from Italian legend Dino Zoff, who actually has come out and said, "Well, Roberto Mancini stay a bit quiet." Zoff has said that the AZZURI are among the top 4 teams in Europe. Mancini's work is remarkable, and Italy can go all the way. Whether you agree with that or not, and whether that will be proven right or not, it will be remained to be seen. However, that's got to be the end of the show. Ritwik, what teams do you think we should cover next time?
I want to give a little bit of a highlight to the Scottish national team, who since 1996 have not been in a tournament until now. They kept it late against Serbia. They won in penalties. I want to tell the world about why I think Scotland's time might have finally come. What about you, Alex? Who do you feel?
That's a very very good proposal. I would like to cover. There's a couple of teams in Europe, the big boys, that are a bit topical, and I'd like to go with Germany, because I don't think Joachim Löw is going to last longer than 2020, and that's my hot take for the end of the show. But thanks everyone for listening. This has been a fantastic episode. Goodbye.